Hello and welcome to the Brubacher and Beyond Podcast, where we are shaping the world we live in so more people can find the construction industry uncommonly refreshing. Welcome everybody today to episode 36. Last time we had a 35th episode with a 35th anniversary. I don't think we have a 36th anniversary today, right? No.
Nah.
No, the 36s.
I mean, a 36 would have been nice. I mean, we should try and do that. Like any podcast, like 37, somebody's here for their 37th anniversary or 38th. But
Now we're going down a rabbit hole. We're straying already, and we already started. So let's get this on track.
Absolutely.
We're with operations today, and they're always on track. And we have some interesting topic today to talk about, core values and integrity. And the two guests today, I will let them introduce themselves.
Yeah, this is Todd Fesco. I'm the General Super for Brubachers. I've been here for 20 years now.
So we should have had you on episode 20.
Yeah, should have.
Oh, man. Well, we missed the mark there, but hey, better late than never, right?
Yeah.
What do you do here, Todd?
Pretty much oversee all site operations with supervisors and pipe crews on job sites, helping with logistics, support, scheduling out manpower, equipment.
So if anybody has an issue, a concern, a problem, the buck stops with you.
Yep.
All right.
Man, how about that? And also along with Todd Fesco, we have Director of Field Operations, Mr. Brad Kober. Welcome once again. This is your second time, right?
AJ, Chris, it's good to be back. I kicked off the very first Brubacher and Beyond Podcast. It seems like many moons ago.
37 episodes.
37 episodes.
2.5 years ago, something like that.
I thought we were 36 episode here.
Yeah, 36.
Yep, 36.
Oh, man, I'm already trying to get the 37th one out.
Man, we're getting ahead of ourselves
we
here.
got a quota to meet here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a little different here. I mean, last time we were in a studio above a distillery in York, right?
No, we were in Lancaster.
In Lancaster.
We were down in Lancaster. I kicked it off on a Friday where we, of course, I had my Hawaiian shirt on for Fun Shirt Friday. We talked a little bit about that on that episode, or the second episode. So yeah, for the long-time listeners, if you want to know about Brad Kober, you can go back and listen to the first one. For the first-time listeners, or you're just joining us, I've been with Brubacher Excavating 23 years. Started as a dozer hand, really was provided the opportunities to progress my career within this organization up to Director of Field Operations. My main role is to provide leadership, management, guidance, kind of all the above to everything we do field operationally at Brubacher Excavating. That includes survey department, land clearing, supporting Todd with the site and his role, the pipe crews, paving, you name it, kind of falls up under my umbrella.
So really when it comes to like field operations and whatnot, like with you guys, like Chris mentioned, the buck definitely stops here.
Yeah, I don't want to say like we're the kind of end-all be-all as operations. We're really more of a support and guidance role. I don't want to take anything away from our crews in the field and our ops teams. We have project managers, PEs, and our superintendents. And all the way through the brand new labor that might be mudding up inlets. Those are the guys that really make the operations happen. We're just here to provide support and guidance.
That's a big deal. The field crews are out there and when nobody is looking, and which is why we have this episode. We're doing what's called the At Our Core series, of course, talking about the 4 core values, which is safety, integrity, initiative, and teamwork. And we're diving deep into integrity. One of the things I've noticed while going out to meet the field teams is there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that I never knew even happened. And it's crazy that everything is meticulously planned, everything is written down, measured, and just very, very meticulous. So one thing I want to ask is, like, how do you personally define integrity, like on and off the job?
I'd say it's a big issue with trust, creating that trust between everybody in the field, knowing that everybody has each other's backs when it comes to planning, doing the job, getting a good final product of what we're looking for.
So how does that final product, I mean, AJ talked a little bit about it. We have a 2-week look ahead. If you ever go into our job trailers, I mean, you can see what's going to happen. What happens when something doesn't go right? Right? Like, that's what we're talking about. I think the best definition for me for integrity is doing the right thing when no one's looking, right? Like, that's...
Yeah, and that comes into the trust factor. Being humble enough to admit that a mistake was done and willing to learn from that mistake and become better at your job doing what you're doing.
Yeah. But also being in the right community that it's accepted, right?
That's why I say the trust factor. And to be able to have that open discussion on, hey, I messed up here, but let's figure out how we fix it, and let's figure out how we learn from it.
You know, I'm sure you've had experiences where you had to make decisions that tested your integrity regarding the quality of the work done. Is there anything there that would come to mind? Would be the first thing that comes to mind? I know there's a lot.
I've made plenty of mistakes throughout my whole career.
Teaching opportunities there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But learning from that, and the one that's always stuck out in my head is I made a mistake with ordering the wrong type of stone, which was a cost impact to the job. But learning from that and having that open discussion with the project team at that time, learning from that, being able to know how to make the right decision in the future, I learned from it, and being humble enough to admit that I made that mistake and not worry about, hey, I'm going to lose my job over this. It was a learning curve for me.
Wow.
Yeah, I would say for me, the integrity of what we do, I mean, we do a lot of work that people don't see, right? Everybody sees the blacktop at the end of a job or a building that's built. Not many people understand what it took to the amount of dirt you moved or rock you may have needed to drill and blast or how much pipe's under the ground. So that's where doing the right thing when nobody's looking, the true definition of integrity, really plays into what we do at Brubacher, but also our industry, where shortcuts always come back to bite you. You know, if you don't seal a pipe properly or make sure you're taking time to have the proper gaskets, you know, pipe work's always the thing that will eventually come back to bite you, and the rework is very costly. To quote Teddy Roosevelt, knowing what's right doesn't mean much unless you do what's right. And that goes whether it's operational integrity of a good quality product, safety, how we handle ourselves in the difficult conversations, even if we need to have conversations with clients and or our direct reports. Just having the ability and to keep your integrity to help somebody become better, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. And it kind of reminds me of a quote, actually, like what that Bob Ross said once, that it's not a failure if you learn something.
Correct.
So that's definitely something that I would take to heart as well. What are some of the things that they would do that, again, that somebody who's passing by or somebody who's just like kind of looking at what's going on, like what do we see that they don't?
The pre-planning. I mean, how much pre-planning we put into what we do to avoid issues down the road.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think it even starts early on when you're bidding a project and you're going over plans. If you see something that's not going to work, what I feel our team does well, our estimators, is if they see that, they try to work through that with the engineer or client early on before it becomes an issue. Again, that's a true test of integrity. If you see something, you know it's not going to work, do you just bid the plan? That's typically what we do in the industry. We bid the plan, we price the work, and then if you're awarded that contract, then typically you're hitting a potential client with a change order right out of the gate. So being able to have those conversations up front and try to mitigate that awkwardness at the start of a conversation or the project when you're talking about a change order is one of the things that I think goes on behind the scenes. For the work itself in the field, again, not to really pick on pipe work, but that's a lot of what we do. You know, are your elevations right? Are you following the percent of slope of pipe and grades that you need? If they're off, making sure that we're putting them in properly.
So Todd, what support do you have in planning if let's say someone from a smaller company across the country is listening, and you can give them some advice here, but planning for manpower, planning for equipment, planning for supplies, planning just to keeping the customer in touch with the project when it's going on, what would you say is the most important thing here?
Communication. The communication between everybody, as far as the guy down in the ditch to the project team that's actually helping get material or talk with a client on issues that we're foreseeing in the future. Communication is a big thing in our industry, of being able to have those tough conversations and being able to do the work correctly.
Yeah, and most of the things that we get from our customers when we're talking to them is the team identified a problem, came to us with a solution, and then we had that conversation to talk it through to see how we can handle that. And then there's value to that, and what Brad was touching upon, we always want to bring insight on site to our projects, help our customers, let our customers know that there's going to be an issue before, so they can plan for it as well. So that's important there. And it's hard sometimes, right? Because Brad, you could be the lowest bidder, but there's a flaw. I mean, and that's when you gotta bring it to the customer's attention.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that's where at times in the industry it gets awkward, and I think was where you kind of touch up against your own integrity on, do you bring that up? Or if you present your idea for the fix, does it then get shared and now your kind of secret sauce is out, right?
Yeah.
But that's where we want to continue to hold ourselves accountable in integrity. We operate and conduct ourselves by our core values at Brubacher, so we still bring it up and have those conversations.
So Todd, talking about integrity and a core value, do you think this is a trainable core value, or do you think it's the atmosphere that everybody's in and just everybody's clicking on the same cylinders as a team? Or how do you bring integrity to the next level? What are some of the things that we do?
I say integrity is definitely trainable if the guy's trainable. Creating that trust between employees and having those hard conversations that have the expectations of what is needed out in the field. I was trained going through my time at Brubacher's to give the product of what was a great product for the client, not for what I thought was a good product. I can't really, how do I even word that?
Are you saying that our expectations were higher than what you thought was a good product, or you thought that what you personally thought was a good product was higher than what we were providing?
I was trained to look for a good product, is what I'm trying to say. When I came into this industry...
Let's talk about how did you come into the industry?
So when I came into this industry, I came from a farm, and
What kind of farm?
A dairy farm.
Okay. All right.
So we did crops. I didn't know what construction was really all about. And when I started and got into it, I frankly fell in love with it. And I learned what people were looking for, what clients were looking for, and I was molded to give the best that I could to create the best product for a client.
How was the transition from farming, especially dairy farming, to the construction industry?
Took advantage of the weather and you got in what you needed to get in, not really looking at if the corn was straight, it was great, but if it had a little bit of a curve to it, it really didn't matter as long as you got it in while the weather was good.
Okay.
Gotcha. That makes sense, honestly. So I know, again, being behind the scenes, you see a lot of things that tests our team members. But another thing that we want to focus on too is a lot of the successes, the wins, and obviously, again, when no one's looking, we're talking about the quiet wins. You both have seen a good bit of these on and off the field. So is there any that come to the forefront of your mind that people outside of Brubacher might not realize were rooted in integrity?
Wow, that's a great question. There's a lot probably rolling through my head right now. Quiet wins on integrity. It keeps coming back to doing the right thing. We've had plenty of team members admit if a mistake has happened. As a company, we have gone back, and nobody likes rework, right? Rework, you never make any money on rework. And in fact, you at times lose credibility. I think it's how you handle, if there is a potential rework situation, how we handle it not only internally with our folks, but also with the clients, and admit the mistake, right? It kind of comes to the saying of speak up, don't screw up, but if you screw up, you definitely want to speak up and handle it in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. One that comes to mind that for whatever reason, and it's you almost had to have it had to happen, but I remember we were doing a large arch culvert years and years ago, and the keyway in the footer that the culvert was sitting in was off, and the mistake that was made, we never had survey back out to shoot the form before we poured the concrete in the footer, right? But when we brought survey back out to do the as-built of the footer before we had the crane show up and set the culvert, we caught it, and thankfully we did, and we had to cut the keyway, make sure engineering signed off of it, and footer had the integrity, strength to hold the culvert. Everything was good, but there's stories like that, and I don't know if I'd say that's a quiet win. For me, and this might sound cliche, everything we do in the field and business is all about people, right? So I think when it comes to people, this is where integrity gets tested the most, is will I have the constructive conversation with somebody that is not meeting expectations or doing what they need to do? And when you're in a company our size and Todd's managing these resources, it's real easy for if somebody's not doing what we need them to do in the field for said supervisor on said project, well, they call dispatch and say, hey, I don't need so and so anymore. He's just you make him available, send him to another job. Mm-hmm. Where Todd's role, my role, and HR is to follow up on, well, are you truly done with said individual or machine on a job, or is said individual just not doing what we need to do? And then being able to have that conversation. That to me is where the integrity piece comes in. We do that very well. We haven't always done that well, and we're still growing as an organization to have those conversations, but that's really where the quiet wins, I think, happen the most, is when you have the conversation. Now the individual gets it, and you can see them starting to be successful. If that makes sense.
Gives them the chance to grow.
Correct.
And usually in those moments, is it something that's distracting the individual? Like there's an issue somewhere else, or they didn't know it was that expectation, or
a lot of the interaction I have with the guys out in the field when it comes to expectations is they're blindsided by it. Because the person who's in charge, the supervisor or pipe foreman, is not having those conversations to set the expectations of what he needs to meet. Mm-hmm. And if a person doesn't know what those expectations are, can you expect them to meet it?
They're just trying to do the best they can, what they think is the best they can, but it's so it starts. So then, what advice would you give somebody that's entering the industry to kind of shorten that learning curve? How can someone new in the industry over communicate with their
ask a lot of questions? If you don't know something, ask the question. Even if it's, hey, am I doing the job that you're asking of me, or is there something else you need from me? You always want to become better than you are today. So ask questions. In my mind, there is no bad question to ask if it's going to better yourself.
Yeah, just make sure it's not the same question every day.
Yes. Very true.
Groundhog Day every day.
And that's definitely a good analogy there.
But kind of to jump onto Brad's, when it comes to integrity, the one thing that really sticks out to my mind is the stuff that you don't see is the guys that go far and beyond to help a neighbor get into his driveway if we got church in front of it. I've been on a job where there was a guy that was wheel-bound, and we shut the job down and bladed it off and helped him get through the job site so he could get to the doctor's office.
Wow.
And to me, that's where a lot of guys will show their integrity to go far and beyond than what's expected of them in the field.
Yeah, and it's just normal. It's normal for that crew, or all the crews, to go above and beyond
to help your neighbor.
Yeah, I mean, we have stories of folks guys and crews on the way home, pulling off the side of the road and helping, family change a tire.
Yeah.
Things like, things that have nothing to do with Brubacher or what we do in the field, or it's just in our DNA.
Wow.
So, those are the wins, and I'm actually glad you brought that up about helping. It's real easy for me to get operationally focused. Where's the resources going? Is everybody deployed? Where's the next job? And at fault, I kind of glance over those small wins of helping the neighbor, helping the person alongside of the road, those stories.
And that's the kind of stories that we want to tell here at Brubacher. Just, beyond what we do, and just great examples of how we live out our values, especially with integrity. Now, you've talked a lot about accountability, and coming in here, I've noticed that a lot, even in my own personal journey here in only, not even 100 days. I've learned a lot more than I probably have anywhere else. And some of it was a bit tough, but honestly, I'm the same way. Like tell me what needs to be done. Tell me the things that, some of the stuff that I don't know about. And I'm obviously going to be asking you guys tons of questions, especially the technical aspects, because, I don't know a lot of that at some point. But when it comes to accountability, how do we reinforce that with our team members, that supports rather than punishes?
I don't know, you two are looking at each other.
I'm trying to figure out how I want to word that one.
I'll touch base on that. I mean, again, uncommonly refreshing. I'm kind of going back in time, kick that off, and talk about that. I think episode 1, podcast 1 or 2, maybe. To Todd's point, he said it earlier, it's communication. It's how we approach it. And I think, AJ, you even touched on it. We're there supportive. We're always here to support, but it's on it might be the client, the individual that works for us, whoever it may be, on how do they receive it, if that makes sense, right? We will give guidance and support to anybody and everybody and hold our integrity high as far as, and again, we're here looking out in the best interest for you and the organization. If it's received with pushback, fire, whatever you want, then it becomes more of it's not so much the supportive, it's corrective, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing, as we continue to talk about integrity here, I think about it here in the world of operations and how do we hold it when it comes to the world we live in. There's a lot of times where a job gets behind schedule or a client is, hey, we need more resources. Throw all the resources you have on the project. Having our integrity of whether we throw more resources at it becomes a safety issue now. So not just throwing resources, right? Being able to have those conversations. The other thing that I see, is when it comes to providing a schedule, that's really where your integrity gets tested. You're trying to sell a job, you're trying to hit the deadline or a milestone that is given by private client, GC, government, all the above. It's real easy to put a date on a piece of paper and say, sure, I'll hit this. But you got to make sure you have the resources, the staffing, everything to be able to do it, and is everything accounted for. And that we basically try to do our best to, I'd say we do our best, don't try, to sell our soul when it comes to giving a schedule, if that makes sense.
talk about that.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, so
what do you
like
mean?
I said, so anybody can put a date on a schedule.
Okay.
Right.
Right, you want paving done by that date? Sure.
Sure. It'll be
Yeah.
done. Sure.
And you're hoping the weather cooperates with you.
Yeah, sometimes that doesn't help any.
How much rain have we had this year?
Too much.
Right?
I think the corn's straight, Todd.
The corn's not growing this year. It's got root rot.
Ooh.
But that's what I mean about selling your soul. You know, we get asked all the time, you know, what's your resources? Can you hit this? And it's really easy to say, well, sure, yeah. At the time you're trying to win the job, yeah. But you don't want to say yeah if you know you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes customers always have that, show me the schedule, but it's really like, let's walk through this. Like,
Correct.
sometimes they need to be educated on the questions they're asking, or we let them sit in our seat and see a little bit more of why the schedule is the way that it's planned out.
Yeah, they're always concentrating on the end date. They don't take a picture of what's going on in the middle of that from the start to finish.
Yeah, because they're focused on that end date and what's going to happen, the trigger, the financing, the payout, all those other things.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need to sit in their seat too and realize that there's a reason why they're asking for that. And it's that communication, right? If we
Yeah.
understand what their needs are or why their needs are the way they are, then we can work together
Yep.
and execute as best as possible.
Yeah, and then I think as soon as we sign said contract and agree upon the schedule, where, again, the Brubacher integrity and a lot of my role and Todd's role and many others is, okay, we've signed up to do this. Now let's work with marketing, HR, let's staff up to do it,
Yeah.
right? Like once we say we're going to do something, we're going to fight like crazy to make sure we hit that date.
And definitely make that happen too. You know, just a lot of moving parts here. Just the logistics, again, being the first 100 days, making my head spin. And I'm sure for some experienced team members here, their heads probably spinning depending on the project too. And I know with that, I'm sure you've made plenty of hard calls that with integrity, prioritizing doing the right thing over other people just taking the easy route, which leads to more mistakes, which leads to more problems, and which leads to a bigger logistical nightmare. Could either of you give me a situation that comes to mind where you've had to make that hard call?
I'd say it's allocation of manpower and equipment when it comes to certain jobs. You probably I don't want to say prioritize, but you look at the schedules of many schedules, and then you got to figure out which one you can hit that's more realistic and what's not realistic. You work with everybody on the project team, everybody within Brubacher's to try and meet all goals, but you're allocating what.
So I'd say, Todd, as we become bigger, especially with the acquisition that happened, some people would think from the outside in, the more pieces that you have or the more resources you have, the easier your job is. Is that correct?
You would hope so.
There's more pieces, there's more to do, there's more
There's a lot more moving
teams,
pieces, there's a lot more employees, there's a lot more equipment, a lot more clients, a lot more deadlines.
Yeah.
Trying to make all those pieces fit together and meet the goals of the teams.
I mean, it sounds like sometimes more looks good on the outside, but from a logistical standpoint, it's now you have more stuff to move around, which makes logistics a little bit tougher in a way.
Makes it tougher, but I love the days when everything goes perfectly.
Love it when a plan comes together. Absolutely.
I think one of the things that when you get more resources and you grow, whether it's organically or through an acquisition, like we currently are in the eye of the storm, if you will, there is more of a pressure, there's a sense of urgency on how to lead and manage through others, right? And that's where the integrity and trust really comes into play. To where, as the team grows, personally, I can't get my arms wrapped around everybody. I lean on Todd a lot, obviously, and other managers within the other departments that I oversee. But even as for Todd's role, the field has grown, and now you have to make sure we are clearly communicating our expectations on how we handle and conduct ourselves and do business at Brubacher. But then on the flip side, you have to also have trust. It's kind of that trust and verify. You know, if I ask Todd to go carry something out, here's the expectation. You know, I trust that he's going to do that. And that trickles basically down through all of operations, whether it's for, you know, paving, clearing, anything we do. And that's the integrity piece of, once that expectation is set, is that individual going to do the right thing? And you've asked, you know, what are some of the difficult decisions that we've made or I have made? Most of the time, if integrity is not followed through, the difficult decision is that trust is broken. And once that trust is broken, this relationship no longer continues. Those are the hard facts of integrity and our core values here. And once trust is dinged, it's like putting the pinhole in the water balloon. You're not putting the water back in the balloon.
No, I completely get that. Absolutely. So,
I think too, you know, you said about the behind the scenes, one of the things that popped into mind, that you kind of walk a fine line of integrity in this industry all day, every day, is you have a paving spec. You know, say your paving spec 6 inches. We grading the stone 1/2 inch high, so we're trying to save money to only lay down 5.5 inches, right? You know, typically your specs are plus minus 1/2 inch, but if the spec is 6 inches and the client's paying for 6 inches,
you should give them 6 inches.
6 inches.
Yep.
So people do that? Like,
sure. I mean, if when your spec is plus or minus 1/2 inch, listen, there's going to be areas within that grade. You put a core, you might only pull 5.5 inches. You know, but you pull a core on another one, you might have 6.5 inches. You know, it's the law of averages. But if I have a large parking lot and everything, or a road and everything's at 5.5 or 5 inches, then did the client truly get what they paid for?
How do we show our clients that there's value to that, right? Like there's
value to it, but it's hard to show them that that's what we're doing. The best thing that we can show is not having rework.
Yeah.
Giving the best looking product that we can when it comes to the final. But what you're going to see at the end of the day is not really, most of the stuff is not really what we did when it comes to landscaping and all that. You're going to see the curve in the road and then the manhole lids and the inlets, but you're not going to see what's below the ground.
Yeah.
So with that, as we start to land this plane here on this episode, do you have any final thoughts, especially for not only those who are new to Brubacher, but those who have transferred here from the acquisition? Any bits of advice you would want to give?
I'd say keep that open communication with everybody. Ask the questions. If you're willing and able to push hard and learn as much as you can, you're more than capable of going in many places at Brubacher.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's just whether it's a Brubacher, just life in general. I mean, growing up, I was always taught and instilled, you're the one that needs to be able to lay your head down at night, right? So whether you're given difficult or constructive feedback, information, whether you're the one receiving it, you know, basically your word and your name is all you have. Yeah. As cliche as that sounds.
Yeah.
And Brubacher has a good reputation of doing the right thing, and we want the same for the folks that work here, to have that same value, especially when it comes to integrity. But I'm sure it's been said in many different quotes and in many different commencement speeches and everything else, but really, your word and your name is all you really have. So just make sure you're doing the right thing.
I've looked at a lot of jobs when I was coming up through. It was Brubacher's job, but my name was also tied to it too, and I didn't want any backlash or anything to my name.
Yeah.
So my name carried the same weight as what the Brubacher name carried on that job site.
And it's cool when you drive past something and it's built, you know, like we were on that, we did that, you know, like,
Yep.
that's going to leave a legacy far more than when we're just here on Earth. But
Yeah.
that building, that whatever it is that was created, will be here a long time.
Yeah, have that pride when you drive through 10 years later and look
Yeah.
at someone and be like, you know what, I had a part of putting that thing up. That
And then
building.
and then everything
Yeah.
flashes up on that project.
Yep.
The trials, the tribulations, and then the reward, right? Like that's the thing that's the shortest, is the reward afterwards. But
Yep.
sometimes the journey's more fun
More fun.
than the actual getting to the completion. But that's something about this industry. Everything has a start date and an end date, right? And then you move on, and it's to the next one, to the next one.
Yeah, on that note, my kids get tired of me pointing out, hey, I built that. Built this golf course, this car wash, whatever. But that's the coolest part about what we do. Is truly putting, whether it's your name or Brubacher or whatever, you can say, I stamped America. I built that.
Yeah.
And there's things already that we built that we're going in now to tear down and repurpose. But either way, we built that.
Yeah. So time to land this plane. AJ, did you want to touch on any of that? Recap on the value at all, or how do you want to?
I mean, Todd and Brad pretty much laid that out there, and I think it's a great, just one of some of many examples here at Brubacher. How integrity is just about a lot of the little choices that add up to everything we do, and how we live out our lives, not only here at Brubacher, but just anywhere in life.
Yeah, so with that, if you like this podcast, I know, AJ, we're growing. We're on a couple more podcast apps. If you want to touch on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are anywhere that you can get your podcasts. So iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube. Again, if you listen to podcasts somewhere, chances are we are there.
Yeah, so if you are listening, please share this, like it. If you don't like it, tell us you don't like it. If you would like to be a guest, if you're in the construction industry, we would like to have you. But from all of us, thank you so much for this episode.
Yes, thank you. And Brad and Todd, thank you for joining us here on the Brubacher and Beyond Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Brubacher podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our podcast so you can listen to new episodes every month. Share it with your friends in the industry and those who might like to learn more about the construction industry. Feel free to check us out on our website at www.brubacher.net. We hope you found the discussion insightful, and we look forward to the next time.